The Thal'Qar Empire's flagship, Dominion's Wrath, floated above the broken remains of another human colony world. Below, fires crawled across the continent like glowing scars, and the void around the planet glittered with drifting metal husks, the remnants of the colony's defense fleet. Admiral Kareth stood at the heart of the command deck, posture rigid, a silhouette framed by the wall of stars. His armor gleamed obsidian, each polished plate etched with the sigils of conquered systems. He watched the destruction with the weary disdain of a man who had seen too many victories to care about them anymore. "Another resistance wiped clean," muttered Captain Veth, his second-in-command. He scrolled through reports with taloned fingers. They last less and less with each raid. Kareth's mandibles flexed, the closest his species came to a smile. Humans burn quickly. A fragile kind. They fight like cornered animals, violent, yes, but desperate. No strategy, no unity. Merely chaos pretending to be courage. The crew chuckled darkly, the sound carrying across the deck. To them, this war was a foregone conclusion. The humans, scattered across a few pale colonies, were insects gnashing their mandibles at giants. The Empire was inevitable, unstoppable. The Admiral himself had commanded campaigns against species far older, far more sophisticated, and had seen them all kneel. Humanity was nothing new. Yet, somewhere deep in Kareth's instincts, there lingered the faintest unease. It wasn't the human strength, he had crushed that handily. It was something else. The way they fought even when defeat was certain. The way they didn't plead for mercy. He pushed the thought aside. "Orders?" Veth asked. Kareth waved dismissively. "Leave a token garrison. Strip the planet of resources, then burn what's left. Let the ashes warn the others. Their homeworld will fall soon enough." The words had barely left his mouth when a new signal lit up the display, a transmission captured from human space. It wasn't military chatter. It was a civilian signal, unencrypted, broadcasting coordinates across half the sector. Earth. Their cradle world. Veth tilted his head. They're advertising their homeworld? Kareth leaned forward, studying the feed. The signal carried images. Oceans, forests, vast cities under blue skies. No military fortifications, no fleets in orbit. It was practically an invitation. "Primitive arrogance," Veth said with a dry laugh. "They want to show us what we'll never take from them." Kareth felt the corner of his mouth twitch. The humans thought this would deter them? That some sentimental display would make the Empire pause? He turned, letting his gaze sweep across his officers. "We have taken empires older than their sun," he said softly, almost to himself. Then, louder, signaled the fleet. "We march on Earth. We will break their spirit in the cradle they crawled from." A ripple of anticipation swept through the deck. Earth. The word itself carried weight. To destroy a species' homeworld was to end them utterly. Some junior officers exchanged glances. "Admiral," one ventured carefully, "intelligence reports Earth has been unusually silent since the war began. Almost too silent." Kareth's eyes glimmered like cold iron. "A desperate species hides when it bleeds. Their silence is fear, nothing more." He turned back to the stars, watching the broken colony smolder below. Ready the fleet. The journey to Earth took 3 cycles. Along the way, Kareth watched more intercepted human broadcasts, strange, chaotic things. Speeches about freedom. Music played over images of soldiers marching. Once, even laughter as their colonies fell. Odd creatures, these humans. When the fleet finally dropped from FTL above the Sol system, Earth awaited like a blue gem against the void. No defenses in orbit. No fleets hiding behind its moon. Just one small space station transmitting a single automated beacon. It almost disappointed him. "Pathetic," Veth said, scanning the emptiness. "They've left themselves bare." Kareth nodded slowly. "Commence orbital bombardment. Burn it quickly." A communications officer stiffened. "Admiral, incoming transmission. From Earth." The bridge fell silent. The message was audio only. A human voice, calm, almost bored, speaking perfect trade tongue. "Thal'Qar fleet. You are trespassing in sole sovereign space. You are advised to withdraw immediately. This is your final warning." The words hung in the air like smoke. Then the deck erupted in laughter. Officers slammed claws against consoles. Some nearly doubled over. "A warning," Veth said between chuckles. "They threaten us?" Kareth allowed himself a low, cruel smile. "And the transmission. Show them what becomes of defiance." The fleet descended toward Earth, weapons charging. Cities glittered below, unaware of the doom above. Kareth watched with cold satisfaction as the first battlecruiser locked targeting arrays on a continent-spanning metropolis. And then the city vanished. Not in fire, not in rubble. It simply disappeared from targeting sensors. The gunner swore, recalibrating. More targets vanished. Entire defense grids went dark, not destroyed, but shut off, as though Earth itself had erased them from reality. "Admiral," a technician said slowly, "our targeting it's being jammed." "No, hijacked. They're inside our systems." Kareth's smile faded. "Impossible. They have nothing capable of." Space tore open above Earth. Not visually. Not with light or fire. One moment there was empty orbit. The next, things floated there, sleek, angular constructs bristling with weapons unfamiliar to any database. Human ships. Thousands. Silent. Motionless. Watching. The calm officer turned pale. "Admiral, they weren't undefended." Kareth stared at the emerging fleet, unease crawling like frost along his spine. No transmissions came. No demands. The human ships just sat there, waiting, as if daring him to make the next move. Shall we open fire?" Veth asked, voice tight now. Kareth hesitated. For the first time in years, he hesitated. Then Earth spoke again, calm as ever. "Thal'Qar fleet. Last chance. Leave now, or stay forever." The alien bridge, so full of laughter minutes ago, fell silent as the weight of those words settled over them like stone. Kareth's mandibles clicked softly. He didn't believe in omens. But something in that voice, in the silence of those waiting ships, felt wrong. Very, very wrong. And yet, pride was a blade he had never learned to sheath. "Charge weapons," he ordered quietly, even as unease coiled in his chest like a living thing. The order to fire never came. Before Kareth could speak, Earth answered for him. Light speared up from the planet's surface. Thin, silver lines that moved too fast for sensors to track. The first Thal'Qar battlecruiser simply shattered, its armor crumpling inward as if struck by the fist of a god. No warning shot. No demands. Just immediate, surgical destruction. The bridge of Dominion's wrath erupted in chaos. Officers shouted coordinates, demanded countermeasures, scanned desperately for the source of the attacks. Kareth stood frozen, eyes locked on the tactical display as more crimson icons, Thal'Qar ships, winked out one by one. "Those aren't missiles," Beth muttered, horrified. "They're rods. Just metal. No warheads." Kareth's throat tightened. The simplicity of it unsettled him more than any exotic weapon could have. A piece of iron dropped from orbit at sufficient speed was more devastating than plasma, cheaper than antimatter, impossible to intercept. Brutal. Efficient. The humans had taken the oldest weapon in the universe, a rock, and turned it into something apocalyptic. Another calm, human transmission cut through the panic. "This is United Earth Defense Command. Your fleet is in violation of Sol space. Countermeasures will continue until full withdrawal." The voice was steady, professional, as though this were routine. Veth spun toward Kareth. "Admiral, we must regroup." Silence. Kareth snapped, though his own composure felt like glass under strain. He studied the battle. Humans weren't engaging in a brawl. They were dismantling the fleet with mathematical precision. Each strike crippled engines, erased command ships, or split supply craft in half. There was no wasted fire, no desperation. Then the wormholes opened. Space twisted without warning. One moment there was empty black. The next, human ships poured through artificial gateways like phantoms. Hundreds of them, sleek and angular, bearing no insignias, no banners, just silent hulls moving with perfect coordination. A human fleet commander finally appeared on the comm screen. She was pale-skinned, dark-eyed, wearing a simple gray uniform. No medals, no decorations. She spoke with the calm cadence of a surgeon announcing an amputation. Admiral Kareth, sole command confirms hostile intent. You will leave or be reduced. This is non-negotiable. Kareth's mandibles shifted. Do you think this changes the war, human? The Empire spans 100 systems. You have one world. Her gaze did not waver. One world was enough. The transmission ended. On the bridge, someone whispered a prayer. Human ships moved before Kareth could issue orders. They didn't dogfight like Imperial fleets. They struck in silence, vanishing through wormholes before counterfire arrived, reappearing behind targets to carve engines apart with beams of accelerated particles. The Thal'Qar fleet had numbers, power, reputation. The humans had speed, precision, planning, and something worse, patience. Kareth finally ordered a retreat, his voice flat. The surviving ships limped from Sol space, battered and burning. Not destroyed, but humiliated. The Dominion's wrath crawled back toward Imperial territory on half power. Silence smothered the bridge until Kareth broke it. Bring me everything on humanity, he said. When the data came, he wished he hadn't asked. It began with archival footage, grainy images of human soldiers storming beaches under machine gun fire, tanks grinding through ruined cities, mushroom clouds blooming like metal flowers. War after war. Centuries of it. Civil wars. World wars. Cold wars. Weapons that poisoned planets, burned atmospheres, cracked mountains. The scale of it dwarfed anything in Imperial history. Kareth watched in silence as human history bled across the screen. They fought each other long before the stars ever knew their name. Veth murmured, they perfected war on themselves. Kareth didn't answer. His mind replayed the battle, the calm voices, the efficiency. Humanity had hidden its strength, letting the Empire believe the colonies were its heart while Earth prepared in silence. Those decoy settlements, sacrifices. He felt something unfamiliar then, curling cold and sharp beneath his ribs. Not respect. Not yet. Fear. But the Imperial Council would never believe it. He knew before he even sent the report. 3 days later, standing before the Emperor and assembled nobles, Kareth delivered his warning anyway. They were ready for us, he said, voice carrying across the marble hall. The humans have technology we cannot track, strategies we cannot predict. Their homeworld is fortified beyond anything we imagined. The Emperor leaned back on his gilded throne, expression amused. One world does not defeat an empire. Kareth's claws scraped against his scabbard. This was not luck. It was preparation. Decades of it. Perhaps longer. The nobles murmured, but he saw disbelief in their eyes. Arrogance. The same arrogance that had led him to Sol, blind to risk, deaf to instinct. You think too small, the Emperor said lazily. Deploy the Second Fleet. Burn their world properly this time. Kareth hesitated. He remembered the wormholes, the rods falling from the sky, the way human ships had moved like a single organism. I recommend caution, he said carefully. The Emperor smiled thinly. Caution is for prey. The court laughed. Kareth said nothing more. He had seen prey before. It never built weapons like that. As he left the chamber, Veth caught his arm. Will they listen? Kareth stared at the stars beyond the palace windows. The Imperial banners hung motionless in the cold air. No, he said finally. They won't. And deep down, he wondered if the Empire had already lost the war and simply didn't know it yet. The thought stayed with him long after the summons arrived for the next offensive. It stayed when the Second Fleet gathered, vast and glittering, to reclaim Imperial pride. It stayed as Kareth boarded Dominion's wrath once more, feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching from the darkness between stars. The humans hadn't celebrated their victory at Sol. They were waiting, and Kareth feared he knew. The Second Fleet stretched across the stars like a silver storm. Hundreds of Imperial warships glimmered under the light of distant suns, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons, missile banks, and the pride of 1,000 conquered worlds. They gathered at the edge of human territory, engines humming, banners of the Thal'Qar Empire displayed in defiance across every channel. Admiral Kareth stood on the bridge of Dominion's Wrath, watching as the formation finalized. His officers moved with crisp precision, confidence returning after the humiliation at Seoul. The Emperor himself had promised to witness this offensive. That alone made failure unthinkable. And yet, Kareth felt it again, that crawling unease. Veth approached, voice low. They still underestimate them. Kareth's gaze never left the fleet display. Arrogance deafens louder than warning sirens. Veth hesitated. Do you believe we can win? Kareth turned slowly, meeting his second's eyes. Victory depends on the enemy making mistakes. I have yet to see them make one. The words hung between them like frost. Moments later, the Imperial Council broadcast lit up every flagship. The Emperor's holographic image filled the bridge, golden armor gleaming, voice echoing with Imperial authority. People of the Thal'Qar, he declared, today we end this insult. Humanity will learn its place beneath our banners. Cheers erupted across the fleet. Kareth remained silent. When the fleet advanced, they expected resistance at the borders. Human outposts had always fought like cornered animals before collapsing. But this time, there was no resistance at all. No patrols. No transmissions. Empty space greeted them, silent and cold. The first unease rippled through command channels. Where are their ships? Veth muttered. Kareth studied the displays. It felt wrong, too quiet, too deliberate. Hours passed before the first attacks came. Not fleets. Not armies. Disruption. Human drones struck supply convoys far behind Imperial lines, vanishing before pursuit ships arrived. Communications fractured as relay satellites exploded in sudden, precise detonations. Mining stations went dark. Fuel depots vanished into fireballs. The Second Fleet pressed on, unaware its lifelines were already bleeding out. Kareth read each report in silence. The pattern was obvious. Humans weren't defending territory. They were cutting arteries. Tell the Council, he ordered. We are walking into a trap. But the Council was deaf to warnings. The Emperor demanded speed, demanded victory, demanded Earth burned before the galaxy began doubting Imperial supremacy. So the fleet pressed deeper. The first human warship appeared on the 5th day. One vessel against hundreds. It didn't attack. It simply transmitted a single message across all channels. A woman's voice, calm as ice. Second Fleet. You are trespassing in restricted space. Turn back. Final notice. Kareth stared at the transmission. The voice was the same as before at Seoul, steady, measured, carrying no fear. The fleet laughed. Even some of Kareth's own officers allowed themselves a sneer. One ship against hundreds. Absurd. But Kareth watched the lone vessel retreat without firing. He felt his claws tighten. They're watching us. Hours later, more human ships appeared. Not in fleets, always scattered, always moving through wormholes with surgical timing. Every encounter cost the Second Fleet another ship, another convoy, another fragment of morale. The humans fought like no empire Kareth had ever faced. There were no grand battles, no declarations. They dismantled the Second Fleet as one might dismantle a weapon, piece by piece until nothing remained but hollow threat. Morale began to fray. Officers whispered about the silence after each attack, the way human ships appeared and vanished without warning, leaving wreckage drifting among the stars. By the time the Second Fleet reached its staging ground near Seoul, it was already crippled. Half its supply lines were gone. Communications ran through jury-rigged relays. The men were tired, jumpy, haunted by enemy they rarely even saw. The Emperor's holographic image returned, demanding explanations. Kareth faced him with expressionless calm. They are not fighting for territory. They are fighting for time. Every day we chase ghosts, they build strength. The Emperor's golden eyes burned, then crushed them quickly. Kareth did not reply. That night, aboard Dominion's Wrath, Kareth studied the human footage again. Not the battles this time, their history. He watched wars fought in trenches drowned by mud, cities swallowed by firestorms, soldiers advancing through nuclear wastelands wearing masks like skulls. Empires rose and fell in centuries of blood before humanity even left its own atmosphere. No wonder they fought without fear. They were born from it. Veth found him, still watching hours later. "They're not like us," Kareth said quietly. Veth glanced at the screen, mushroom clouds rising over shattered landscapes. They perfected war long before they had ships. Kareth nodded slowly. "We conquer for power. They fight because they always have." A transmission interrupted them. Human forces had hit another supply depot, this one carrying food for the entire rear fleet. Not a single Imperial ship survived. The Emperor's fury burned across every channel. He ordered the fleet forward immediately, demanded Sol itself be taken as vengeance. Kareth stared at the tactical maps, at the spreading reports of sabotage, at the endless harassment from human ghost fleets. It felt like walking into jaws closing in slow motion. But orders were orders. The Second Fleet advanced, what remained of it, toward Sol. Kareth stood on the bridge as the stars stretched around them, his officers tense, the crew silent. Something waited ahead. He could feel it in his bones, in the hollow quiet between transmissions, in the precision of every human strike. The Empire believed it was marching toward victory. Kareth feared it was marching toward something else entirely. And humanity was still watch. The Second Fleet reached Sol with half its ships limping and the other half low on fuel, ammunition, or morale. Imperial banners still flew on every hull, but they looked like desperate symbols now, not emblems of glory. Kareth stood at the command platform of Dominion's Wrath, gaze fixed on the blue sphere ahead. Earth, the world that had defied an empire. Silence gripped the bridge. The men watched their sensors uneasily, knowing by now what silence meant when dealing with humans. The first wormhole opened without warning. One human ship emerged. Then another. Then hundreds. Thousands. They spread across the void in perfect, unhurried formation. No transmissions, no demands, no bluster. Just quiet precision. Kareth felt his chest tighten. It wasn't just the numbers. It was the control. The confidence. The Second Fleet was battered, half-blind, strung out from weeks of fighting shadows. The human fleets looked untouched, immaculate, as though they had been waiting all along for this moment. The Emperor's flagship transmitted across the armada, his voice thunderous. "Thal'Qar soldiers, today we reclaim our honor. All ships advance." Kareth didn't move. Humanity moved first. Wormholes erupted across the system like blooming scars in space. Human fleets poured through every one, cutting off retreat paths, surrounding the Imperial forces in layers of steel and fire. The first human strike came with surgical precision. Missile swarms tore through escort ships. Railgun rounds punched holes clean through Imperial cruisers, venting crews into space before they even reached escape pods. Every shot crippled engines, command decks, weapons arrays. Never random destruction, always targeted, always efficient. Imperial ships fought back, hurling plasma and nuclear warheads, but the human fleets were already gone, vanishing through wormholes before counterfire arrived, reappearing at impossible angles. The Second Fleet dissolved ship by ship, its formation shattered before they even stabilized. On the bridge, Veth whispered, "They're dismantling us." Kareth said nothing. The Emperor's flagship broadcasted frantic orders as human railgun rounds slammed through its escorts. The Emperor demanded counterattacks, demanded courage, demanded loyalty. His voice cracked when the first human missile tore through his flagship's shields. Kareth watched without expression as the Emperor's final command cut off mid-sentence in a blossom of white light. The Second Fleet died soon after. Not in one grand explosion, not in glorious battle. It died in fragments, in precision strikes, in the cold efficiency of a predator dismantling prey piece by piece. Kareth gave the order none of his officers expected. Signal surrender. The words fell like lead across the bridge. Veth turned sharply. Admiral. There is no fleet left, Kareth said, voice flat. Only corpses waiting to drift. The surrender signal pulsed across the system. Human fleets halted instantly. Weapons lowered. Engines powered down. The silence returned, heavier than before. A single human transmission followed, calm and final. Imperial forces. Hostilities concluded. Await terms. No celebration. No mockery. Just quiet inevitability. Kareth expected execution, imprisonment, humiliation. Instead, the human envoy who boarded Dominion's wrath was polite, almost detached. A woman in a gray uniform, the same one who had spoken before, stood before him on the ruined bridge. You commanded this fleet? She asked. Kareth met her gaze. I did. She nodded once. Then you will deliver the surrender to your people. Governance transition begins immediately. Kareth blinked. You mean to rule the Empire? She studied him a moment before replying. We mean to end the war. Whatever follows is up to your people. Her tone carried no hatred, no gloating. That unsettled him more than vengeance would have. He expected conquerors. He found administrators. Within days, Imperial command structures collapsed. Worlds that had once sent tribute to the Thal'Qar throne now transmitted surrender to Earth instead. Human fleets appeared over major planets, not as destroyers, but as cold arbiters of a new order. Kareth sat in the Imperial Council chamber a week later, not as admiral, not as prisoner, but as the newly appointed liaison between a fallen empire and its conquerors. The human representative stood at the center, delivering instructions with quiet precision. Some imperial nobles demanded rebellion. Others stared at the floor in silence. Kareth said nothing at all. He remembered watching those centuries of human wars. He remembered the precision at Seoul. He remembered the silence after victory. When the session ended, Kareth approached the human envoy. Why spare us? She regarded him calmly. We didn't want your empire. We only wanted you to stop. And now? Kareth asked. She paused, as though weighing the words carefully. Now the galaxy knows we won't be prey. Her fleets departed one by one, vanishing through wormholes, leaving imperial worlds under new banners. Not of conquest. Not yet. But of warning. Kareth watched them go, the silence of the stars pressing close around him. The Empire had ruled for centuries. Now it bent beneath a species that had hidden its strength until provoked. He wondered if the galaxy truly understood what had awakened here. Because Kareth did. Humans hadn't fought for territory or resources or glory. They fought because someone had come to their home uninvited, because someone had mistaken restraint for weakness. They fought, he realized, like a species that had been at war with itself since the moment it learned to stand. And now all that history, all that fury, was aimed outward. The Thal'Qar Empire was gone. The galaxy would follow, one way or another. As Kareth left the chamber, he glanced once more at the human banners rising over the capital. They carried no motto, no threat, no boast. They didn't need one. The war was over. But something far larger had just begun.